I bought a Rolls-Royce to celebrate my success, but I didn't expect it to get me handcuffed in my own driveway. One woman, our neighborhood's self-proclaimed HOA queen, decided my car didn't belong. She called the cops, claimed I was suspicious, and tried to ruin my reputation. But what happened next? It exposed her in front of the entire community. It all started the moment I pulled into the neighborhood with my brand new black Rolls-Royce. It wasn't just any car. It was the car. Midnight black, chrome trim that caught the sun like a diamond. The hood ornament stood tall and proud like royalty announcing its arrival. And the engine? It didn't roar, it purred. Smooth, confident, powerful. This wasn't just transportation. It was a reward for years of sleepless nights, hard work, hustle, and sacrifices no one ever saw. I had just moved into a quiet, upscale suburban neighborhood, Oak Ridge Heights. The kind of place with freshly trimmed lawns, cookie-cutter homes with gray siding, and white picket fences that screamed peaceful. But little did I know, this peaceful place had its own beast. I was halfway down the main street when I noticed it. The silence. People walking their dogs paused. Kids on bikes stopped and stared. Curtains shifted in windows. It wasn't the usual, hey, a nice car glance. It was suspicious awe, like something had invaded their perfectly controlled environment. Then I saw her, the queen of the HOA, the legend, the myth, the menace. Her name? Karen. No surprise there. She was standing on her porch, straight back, clipboard in hand, one foot tapping the step. Short blonde bob, buttoned-up gray sweater, pearl earrings. The look of a woman who ran every committee, knew every rule, and probably memorized every single regulation in the neighborhood charter. Her house, of course, was pristine. Perfect flower beds, immaculate shutters, two garden gnomes positioned with military precision. And there she stood, completely still, as if my car had disrupted the fabric of her universe. Our eyes locked for a second. I smiled, genuinely. I gave a friendly wave. She didn't wave back. Instead, she squinted like I had just committed a crime by existing. You could almost hear her internal HOA sensors going off. To her, I wasn't a new neighbor. I was a disturbance. A flashy, shiny, chrome-wrapped disruption to her well-ordered cul-de-sac. I kept driving, slowly pulling into my driveway at the end of the street. My house was slightly bigger than the others, with wide steps, a clean facade, and a garage that had been waiting for the Rolls. I parked with care, stepped out, and took a deep breath of the suburban air. And as I closed the door, I could still feel her eyes on me. It was like being watched by a hawk in designer flats. But I brushed it off. New neighborhoods come with new faces, right? Maybe she was just curious. Maybe she was just the kind of person who needed a little time to warm up to change. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. As I walked toward my front door, I heard the unmistakable sound of a phone camera shutter. I turned my head just enough to catch Karen on the sidewalk, casually pretending to take pictures of a bush while clearly angling her phone toward my car. I raised an eyebrow. She didn't flinch, just walked off like nothing happened. Okay, I thought. Maybe she's the neighborhood watch type. No big deal. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the last I'd see of her. Something in her body language screamed trouble. Like she had already filed a mental complaint, contacted the HOA, and drafted a passive-aggressive email, all in the 30 seconds I'd been parked. To most people, it was just a car, but to her, it was a declaration of war. And little did I know, the battle had already begun. That evening, after settling in my new home, I returned from unpacking a few boxes to find something odd. There, taped right to the center of my front door, flapping slightly in the evening breeze, was a sheet of paper, printed, bolded, and signed. It read, "Your vehicle does not comply with community standards. It is considered disruptive and overly flashy. Please remove it within 24 hours, HOA." I stood there, holding the note in my hand, blinking at the ridiculousness of it. Disruptive? Overly flashy? I looked over the driveway, at the Rolls-Royce parked as neatly as it could be, not even on the curb. Not blocking a mailbox. Not even a fingerprint on it. It was just parked. I chuckled. Honestly, I thought it was a joke at first. Some over-the-top welcome prank. Maybe the neighbors were funny. Maybe this was some kind of suburban hazing ritual. But no, the font was too serious. The wording too bitter. This was the real deal. And there was only one person in this neighborhood who could have authored it. Karen. The next morning, just as I was sipping my coffee and scrolling through my emails, I heard a knock on the door. Not a casual knock either. It was that 3 quick hits, impatient, business kind of knock. I opened the door, and there she was. Karen in full form. Hairstyled like she had an HOA board meeting at dawn. Gray coat, buttoned up like she was preparing for battle. A folder in one hand and a clipboard in the other, as if she had been documenting violations since sunrise. She didn't say hello. No, welcome to the neighborhood. No smile. Just cold. HOA energy. She lifted the clipboard with the flair of a TV judge. You're violating Article 4B, vehicle appearance. This is a quiet, respectable community, not a luxury car showroom. I paused for a moment, trying to process the absurdity of it. Who says that? Luxury car showroom? Still, I kept calm. No reason to escalate things. Ma'am, I said politely, the car is legally parked. It's registered. Insured. It's not blocking anything, and as far as I know, there's no rule against owning a nice car. She didn't flinch. She just narrowed her eyes, lips pursed like she had smelled something offensive. This community values uniformity. We don't need people disrupting the peace with flashy displays of wealth. It sets the wrong tone. People talk. I raised an eyebrow. People talk or you talk. She ignored the question. Instead, she flipped through her folder like she was building a court case. Article 4B clearly states that vehicles that are deemed to visually disturb or disrupt the uniform aesthetic of a neighborhood may be reviewed by the HOA board. So consider this your notice. We'll see what the board says. And just like that, she turned around and walked off, shoulders stiff, clipboard under arm, as if she had just handed down a legal verdict on the steps of the Supreme Court. I stood there in the doorway, stunned, still holding my coffee, watching her march back to her house with purpose like some villain in a daytime drama. I wanted to laugh, but part of me knew this wasn't the end of it. That woman wasn't just handing out warnings. She was on a mission. A mission to prove she ran the neighborhood. And I had just unknowingly driven a luxury-shaped threat into her kingdom. The battle lines were drawn. And apparently, in the suburbs, the war starts with a Rolls-Royce and a clipboard. I should have just let it go. Shrugged off the note. Ignored the visit. But when someone starts picking a fight with you over something as harmless as a parked car, it's hard not to push back a little. At first, I brushed it off as harmless drama. A neighborhood power trip. But Karen? She wasn't done. Not even close. Just a few days later, I started noticing something strange. Every morning, around 6:45 a.m., I'd see her walking by my driveway with her phone out. Sometimes she pretended to stretch or look at flowers, but the phone was always angled at my car. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, until I saw the flash. That's when it clicked. She was taking pictures. Every day. Multiple angles. Front, back, side mirror, even the license plate. Like she was collecting evidence for a court case. It didn't stop there. She'd show up again around 8 p.m., right after sunset. Phone out, camera ready, creeping down the sidewalk like she was part of a neighborhood CSI team. It was ridiculous and creepy. Then, one evening I caught her in the act. I had just finished dinner and stepped outside to let my dog out. The porch light flicked on, and there she was, crouched behind my hedge, trying to get a shot of the back of the Rolls. I couldn't help myself. Need a better shot? I said, loud enough for her to hear. She jumped back like she'd seen a ghost, then quickly stood up and straightened her sweater. This is for HOA documentation, she snapped without making eye contact. Your car continues to be a distraction to the neighborhood. Funny, I said. It's been parked in the same spot every day. Kind of boring, really. She didn't answer, just scurried off like she had been caught stealing. At that point, I figured the nonsense had reached its peak. I was wrong. The very next afternoon, I took my dog for a walk down the block. It was a calm day. Kids were riding scooters. Sprinklers were running. Birds chirping. You know, suburban peace. Until I saw the first police car slowly rolling in from the entrance. Then a second one. And a third. Lights on. Sirens off. But they were clearly looking for something or someone. At first, I thought maybe there had been a robbery or an accident. I looked around, trying to make sense of it. Then I turned the corner and saw her. Karen, standing on her lawn, arms crossed, chin raised high, with a look that screamed, "I've finally got him." One of the officers was talking to her while the others were scanning the street. They looked serious, focused. I started to feel uneasy. This wasn't a random patrol. They had been called here. I stood frozen for a second, watching them try to figure out if I should walk over or mind my own business. And then one of the officers saw me and started walking my way. "Sir, are you the owner of that black Rolls-Royce?" he asked, pointing to my driveway. "Yeah, is there a problem?" He didn't answer right away, just motioned for the others. Karen watched like it was her Super Bowl. She stood there behind the officers, looking proud, smug, like she had just summoned divine justice from the heavens. I had no clue what was coming, but one thing was clear. She'd gone from taking pictures to calling the cops. And whatever story she had told them, it was serious enough for 3 squad cars. Things were about to escalate. Big time. I couldn't believe the words coming out of the officer's mouth. "Sir, we received a report of a suspicious vehicle possibly involved in illegal activities." I blinked. Illegal activities? For a second, I actually looked around, thinking maybe he was talking to someone else. But no, his eyes were locked on me. I followed his finger as he pointed straight at the Rolls-Royce sitting quietly in my driveway. That car, the one I had worked my entire adult life to earn. The one I had just waxed the night before. The one that hadn't moved an inch all day. "Wait, what?" I asked, confused. "My car." The officer didn't say anything right away. But behind him, I saw her, Karen, hovering like a puppet master, whispering to another officer with all the drama of a courtroom witness. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught the words. Loud engine at all hours. Unusual traffic. Luxury car, brand new, possibly drug money. Drug money. I let out a short laugh. I couldn't help it. It was ridiculous. Comical even. This woman had gone from "your car is too shiny" to "he might be running a cartel" in less than a week. But that laugh? Big mistake. The officer didn't laugh back. He didn't even smirk. His face stayed stone cold. "I'm gonna need to see some ID," he said firmly. Now, don't get me wrong. I had nothing to hide. I handed over my ID without hesitation. But the way he looked at it, then stepped back to radio it in, felt like something out of a crime movie. Across the street, I could see my neighbors watching through their windows. Curtains twitching. A couple even standing on their porches. One guy had his phone out. Of course. Karen, meanwhile, stood like she was accepting an award. Arms folded, chin lifted. She didn't even try to hide the smirk spreading across her face. And then the line came, the one that made my stomach drop. "Sir, we're going to have to detain you temporarily until this is cleared up." I blinked again. "Wait, what? Detain me? For what?" But before I could even finish the sentence, one of the other officers stepped forward and said, "Please turn around." My heart was pounding now. "Are you serious? I live here. I've done nothing wrong. This is insane." The officer stayed calm, but firm. "This is just procedure, sir. We'll sort everything out once we've verified a few things." And just like that, I felt the cold metal of the handcuffs snap around my wrists. In my own driveway. Not in a back alley. Not at some shady warehouse. Not during a high-speed chase. Just a guy in sweatpants and a hoodie, walking his dog on a quiet afternoon, suddenly being treated like a suspect. The neighborhood was silent now, but not empty. People were watching, recording, judging. Whispers buzzed from one porch to another. And Karen? She looked like she had just won a trophy. Like she had been waiting for this moment her entire HOA career. Her smug little grin said it all. "I warned you." I stood there, heart racing, hands cuffed, surrounded by 3 officers while my Rolls-Royce glistened in the background like some kind of crime scene prop. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to say this is harassment, but I knew better. I stayed quiet. I kept telling myself, stay calm. The truth will come out. Just stay calm. And deep down, I knew I was going to prove her wrong. And when I did, the entire neighborhood would see the real problem. And it wasn't the car. But here's the twist. Everything Karen said, total lies. No noise complaints. No suspicious activity. No strange visitors. Nothing illegal. Nothing even close. As soon as the officer uncuffed me, I calmly walked over to the hood of the police cruiser and laid it all out, Neatly, clearly, professionally. Driver's license, vehicle registration, business license, proof of ownership, insurance papers, tax forms, even screenshots of the payment confirmation for the Rolls-Royce. Clean money, clean history. The lead officer took his time flipping through everything. He was quiet at first, clearly going through his checklist, trying to see if anything Karen had said held water. Spoiler alert, it didn't. After about 20 minutes, he finally closed the folder, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "Sir, sorry for the misunderstanding. Everything checks out. You're free to go." Just like that. No citations, no warnings, not even a raised eyebrow. He nodded, then gestured to the other officers to remove the cuffs. As they clicked off, I rubbed my wrists and glanced across the lawn where Karen was still watching, arms crossed, lips pressed so tight they turned white. One of the younger officers, clearly tired of these kinds of calls, muttered under his breath, "We get this a lot. Honestly, usually from HOA folks who don't like change." Bingo. Karen wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She wasn't enforcing peace or keeping order. She was just mad. Mad that I showed up in something nicer, something newer, something that didn't blend in. And now, her entire narrative had fallen apart. The moment the officers walked back to their vehicles, Karen stormed off. No apology, no explanation, just the sound of her designer heels stomping across her pristine lawn like a retreating general who just lost the war. But the real shift? It wasn't with her. It was with the neighborhood. Because while Karen was trying to have me arrested, everyone was watching. Neighbors who had never even said hello were now standing on their porches. A few crossed the street to check if I was okay. One guy even offered me a bottle of water, like I'd just survived a fight. And suddenly, I wasn't the guy with the flashy car anymore. I was the guy Karen couldn't take down. And word spread fast. That week, I noticed little things. Subtle shifts. A nod here, a wave there. People who had kept their distance now smiled as I walked by. The couple down the road, who never made eye contact, they invited me over for barbecue. Even a few teens came over to check out the Rolls and ask questions about how I got it. Then, about a week later, something happened that I'll never forget. I opened my mailbox and found a small envelope. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note, carefully folded. "Thank you for standing up to her. We've been dealing with her for years. You're the first person who didn't back down. Welcome to the neighborhood." Signed by two families I hadn't even met yet. That note meant more to me than any apology Karen could have offered. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a car, or rules, or an HOA letter. It was about control, about someone thinking they could bully the new guy into submission. But I didn't back down. I stood tall. And now, that Rolls-Royce still sits proudly in my driveway. Polished, parked, peaceful, and I haven't heard a word from Karen since. So yeah, all it took was one car to bring out the worst in someone. But the truth always wins. And now, that same Rolls-Royce sits in my driveway, untouched, and Karen hasn't said a word since. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a twist like this again. More crazy real-life stories coming soon. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes silence is the loudest victory.